From bureaus worldwide, this is FSM.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ollie Barrett. It's Tuesday, June 25th, 2019. My name is Richie Allen. It's good to be with you. The media, of course, collectively should get together and tell you, the world's media, that the Trump administration is lying about Iran. Problem with the media is, of course, that most of the media is owned by corporations which stand to benefit from the illegal invasion of Iran. That's the way it goes, you know.
Richie Allen.
That's the way it goes, you see. Welcome to the program.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Now, later on in the programme, the terrific Gerald Celente, the publisher of the legendary Trends Journal, returns to the programme. We will talk about Donald Trump, and we will talk about Iran and John Bolton and where all of this is going. It's one of the big trends forecast by Gerald and his team last year, and he's been on the money. So Gerald Celente joins the programme in the second hour. Don't miss it. Before that, though, we'll be live to Northumbria University to speak with Professor Valentina Zharkova. She's a professor in mathematics and she's got a PhD in astrophysics. She published a paper which talks about the grand solar minimum, basically a reduction of solar activity that might affect human lives but also might offset the effects of climate change or global warming. Now, this is really important we hear from her. I don't understand why such an academic hasn't been seen or heard on ITV, Sky, Channel 4 or the BBC recently. We'll find out why. We'll talk with Professor Valentina Zharkova this hour. It is Tuesday's Richie Allen Show. If there is nothing like it, tweet me right now. It's at Richie Allen Show. Love to hear from you. Your opinion really matters to me. So get those tweets out now. Right, that's... I did a live stream this morning. It was full of fun and I enjoyed it. It was good crack. It should be on YouTube now, but it isn't, and it's out of my control. When you live stream to YouTube and you end the stream, it should automatically begin processing and then upload to your channel. But it isn't doing it, and it won't do it. It got stuck, and I can't do anything about it. Save, leave it for a while. It's not going to upload, so I will eventually have to delete it. So I'm sorry about that. I will make sure from now on that I record the audio separately, so in the event it doesn't go up onto YouTube, at least you'll be able to hear it. That's if you want to hear it, of course, because you mightn't. You might be fed up of hearing me, and that's all right too. So I couldn't do anything about that. Pure vaudeville today, pure vaudeville. Boris Johnson gave an interview to Talk Radio's political editor. Before we get to Brexit, briefly, let's listen to Boris Johnson attempting to answer the most basic of questions. He's on Talk Radio now with the political editor of Talk Radio. Johnson was asked to answer a very simple question. Basically, what do you do in your downtime?
What do you do to relax? What do you do to switch off?
I like to paint, or I make things. I like to...
What do you make?
I have a thing where I make models of... when I was in Mayor of London, we built a beautiful... I make buses.
You make models of buses?
I make models of buses.
So they're going to be in Downing Street?
So what I do... No, what I don't make models of buses, but what I make is... I get old, wooden crates.
Yeah.
Right? And then I paint them. And they have two suppose it's a wine. It's a box that's been used to contain two wine bottles, right?
Right.
And it will have a dividing thing.
Yeah.
And I turn it into a bus, and I put passengers. You really want to know this?
You're making buses. You're making cardboard buses. That's what you do to enjoy yourself.
I paint the passengers enjoying themselves.
Okay, great.
On the wonderful bus.
Great.
I like to paint things. I make buses. I don't make models of buses. I get old wooden crates, wine bottles, and I paint them. Do you think he was lying? Lying is his default position, Bojo. He was then asked if we will leave the European Union on October 31st, Halloween, and if so, could he rule out another extension for definite, for sure? Could we?
So we understand.
And getting ready to come out on October the
31st.
31st, correct.
Come what may.
Come what may.
Do or die?
Come what may. Do or die. Come what may.
Can you categorically rule out an extension, a further extension?
Yes,
Categorically rule it
yes,
out.
but let me tell you why. At the moment, the law says that the UK is leaving the EU. International treaty law says the UK is leaving the EU on the 31st of October.
So no further extensions
So
to
he's-
Article 50? No further extension?
No.
I promise we'll leave in October. He's lying. He's lying. 26 times, by the way. He did 2 interviews today. He was on LBC Radio with Nick Ferrari, who asked him 26 times about that picture that I spoke about on the YouTube live stream earlier, which is a real shame you can't see that. I don't know. I'm just childish about these things because you go to the trouble of making it and doing it live and then the recording is gone. Cheeses me off. Love those old sayings. Cheeses me off. Where did that come from? Cheeses me off. So Johnson is a buffoon, we know this. We know that Boris Johnson is not going to deliver the UK from the European Union. We know this as well. So why do you even bother your big hairy backside talking about it, Richie? Because I do. Now, I mentioned this morning. RT.com ran a story, and I'll be covering this in depth tomorrow on Tuesday's programme, which will be at a different time. Tell you about that in a minute. I'm like that guy, one of the speakers in The Life of Brian. Do you remember? Sometimes your brain gets so tired with everything that's going on. Not just me, but you as well. You know what I mean. Your thinking becomes muddled, so your sentence construction disappears. Your ability to do it. And you end up sounding like the guy who's giving he's one of the speakers in The Life of Brian. So you've got the screaming speakers screaming about the whores of Babylon and all that. And there's one guy quietly speaking, talking about, and people will lose things and they won't remember where they put certain things and all that. That's the way my brain has gone. So shall I start that again? I'll be doing a programme tomorrow at a different time, and I'm going to focus in that programme on a story that was run by RT today about a court ruling last Friday. What court ruling? Why is it important? Well, a woman in her 20s whose heritage is Nigeria was told by a court on Friday, because of her learning disability, that she would be forced to have an abortion. This is true. This happened on Friday. In her 20s, and has the mental capacity of a 6 to 9 year old, and was told by a judge, because of a petition made by the National Health Service Trust, the judge said, you're not capable of caring for your child, so you are going to have an abortion. I got very upset about this before the live stream this morning. It really affected me badly. More than anything has lately, to be honest with you. I couldn't get over this. Because the woman's mother, a devout Christian and a woman in good standing, said she should have the baby and her parents, me and her dad, will care for the baby as we care for our daughter. But a woman called Justice Nathalie Leven from the Court of Protection, which is a legal arm of the courts, which was set up to resolve cases involving people who are supposedly incapable of making their own decisions. So there's a special court for people who have been deemed incapable of making their own decisions. And the judge, Nathalie Leven, this made me even more upset. A woman said that, well, you have to have an abortion. I am acutely conscious of the fact that for the state to order a woman to have a termination when she doesn't want one is an immense intrusion, she said. And it was dreadful. Now, thanks be to Jesus, Mary, Holy Saint Joseph, if they existed or exist. Yesterday afternoon, and RT didn't have this morning, I'm surprised at this. I wasn't following this story, you see. But thanks be to Holy Jesus in the heavens, that yesterday afternoon the family won an appeal against that decision. And the decision to force her to have the abortion against her will was overturned. And I was delighted when I heard that today. I don't know these people. It shouldn't mean anything to me. But I couldn't believe it. I thought, how could this possibly happen? And then I found out today, due to a lovely woman who's going to come on the programme tomorrow, who has been following this case, that the decision has been overturned. She'll have the baby and the grandparents will look after it. There you are. I mentioned this on the live stream earlier, but as I said, the live stream is gone. John Sherrington, a Catholic bishop in Westminster, was absolutely horrified by this. And I tried to get some comment from him, but I'm finding it difficult to reach him, to be honest. I get myself together and gather myself here. Unbelievable. But anyway, the decision was overturned, and I don't know anything about Justice Nassily leaving, and it might sound very unfair, but anybody who could say that you must have an abortion, whether you like it or not, and ignore the wishes of the woman herself and her parents who pledged to mind and raise the child, that woman is not fit to sit in judgment on anybody. And you know I'm not a religious man. It's got nothing to do with religion. It's horrendous. Let's move on. Talk about that tomorrow. I'm going to be broadcasting at 1 o'clock tomorrow. I'll be doing the newspapers tomorrow as usual at 9:30, but then I'll be doing a live show with an interview at 1 o'clock because of an engagement I have tomorrow. I'll be doing the same thing on Thursday. It's just for this week. All right. So Jeremy Kyle's producers were grilled, they love that term, grilled, at the House of Commons Culture Select Committee today, who was chaired by Damien Collins. And this is all about, of course, the lack of care for guests who've appeared on the Jeremy Kyle show, which is a show where people, most often people from working class backgrounds like ourselves or like myself, but people a bit down on their luck, and people who are maybe not sophisticated, not unintelligent, just not sophisticated, and have got problems, interpersonal problems, were brought on to Jeremy Kyle to argue with one another about matters of infidelity and stuff like that. And a man called Steve Diamond committed suicide having participated in the programme. He was confronted with a lie detector test live on the programme and was told that he was a liar, that he did have an affair, and it cost him his relationship. So the producers of this programme are called in today. Jeremy Kyle refused to attend. Damien Collins was there along with the other MPs on the committee, and they found it quite horrifying, maybe understandably, that the producers of the programme don't seem to know very much about the reliability of lie detector tests. You'll hear Damien Collins, and then you'll hear a guy called Tom McLennan, who's a producer.
You're the executive producer, you're responsible for this programme.
Yeah.
So have you inquired as to how effective these tests are, what the percentage likely success rate is?
Yeah, which is not 100%. I mean, we could talk to 5 different examiners and get a range of opinions and send them on to you.
Well, have you got those figures?
I haven't got those figures.
Do you not know? Do you not know, actually?
I know that it's an 100% show, and we made it very clear to everybody, including the viewers.
This is a pretty fundamental programme. Do you not know what the range is? You don't have that information in your head?
I don't have the information in front of me now.
I find that astonishing, actually.
It's more than astonishing. It's really dreadful, because you're bringing people together, and often one of the guests has been accused of doing something, and they deny it, and then you're bringing into the process, you're bringing in a lie detector test, and it's unreliable, and you actually don't know what the range is. Anyway, Jeremy Kyle. 17 minutes past the hour. Liz tweets, it's nice to see some good news, or hear some good news about the Nigerian woman. Thanks for that, Liz. Faisal says on the live stream, Monday's edition is there. Yeah, Monday's edition is there, but this morning's edition isn't there because it won't process. Matt says, I've just watched this morning's papers on YouTube, mate. It is there. Well, I can't see it. We're talking about Tuesday. I can't see it. It's telling me it's processing. It's not there. I'll have a look at it after the show. Hi to John Stott. John, it's a Commodore's tune called Machine Gun. There's a little musical piece that leads into the programme. It's Machine Gun by the Commodores. Sooty's Rehab says, listening to Sunday View, and I still stand by Maxime, we will never have peace until we kill the people who make us kill each other. I'm a pacifist. Yeah, I don't agree with that. Because I think ultimately the powers that be, or the elite, or whatever they are, want to drive us to violence and want to drive us to committing acts of violence and aggression so that they can introduce martial law. And this is why we've seen the hyper-militarisation of the police in recent times, not just here in the UK, not just in America, but in countries around the world. Look at the police today. Look at them. And I don't mean when they're confronting protesters. Look at them when they are going about their business. They do not look like police officers of days of yore. They look like RoboCop. They're decked out in Kevlar and they've got, I don't know, devices and gadgets coming out of all over the place. Many of them these days now are carrying guns, even in this country where we're not supposed to have an armed police force. They don't look like the police. They increasingly behave thuggishly and loutishly when dealing with people, here as well. They're driving people to take to the streets because they want to use that then as a pretext to bring in the most draconian regulations and legislation about where you can go and where you can't go. I really do believe that violence is not the answer. Violence should only ever be used when your physical health is threatened, when you are at grave risk of physical harm, you or yours. But don't end up, don't become the monster to defeat the monster. I can't remember who said that exactly, but I agree with it. Hi to Colin in Dublin. How you doing, mate? Enjoyed yesterday's programme, he said, because he likes what Eric Gajewski had to tell me yesterday. That's, of course, on Spotify now. It's on iTunes and it's on YouTube as well, if you missed the Eric Gajewski chat yesterday. Tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to take a tune, and when I come back from that, we'll introduce Valentina Zharkova, who's a professor at Northumbria University, and it's really important that we hear what she has to say. So, while we get her on, let's have some music from The Clash. Music from The Clash on the Richie Allen Show. Rock the Casbah. The time is coming up for 23 and a half minutes past the hour. Thanks for tuning in. Great to be with you as always. Busy old programme, so let's just crack on with it. Now, if you're in the UK, and of course we've got listeners around the world, you'll be aware of a series being run by Sky News at the moment called A New Climate: Science, Storms and Protests, the Issues Behind Climate Crisis. This is a new dawn for 24-hour news channels. It's very unusual. We've spoken about this before. Activist journalism on our television screens. And Sky has said, as the BBC has said very recently, that the debate is settled. There is no need to provide balance anymore. There isn't an argument. Man-made climate change, CO2 emissions are driving climate, and if we don't deal with it soon, it'll be catastrophic. And there are a number of stories in the press today about climate change, including artificial intelligence and how it might help offset climate change. And there are terrible stories about deforestation and the Amazon rainforest as well. But there are people with different opinions. There are people working in academia who have a different take on it. And it's strange that we don't hear or see these people on BBC, Sky or Channel 4. One of them is a professor in mathematics at Northumbria University, who also has a PhD in astrophysics, and published a really interesting paper which talks about the reduction of solar activity that is coming in the next 25, 30, 40 years, something known as the Grand Solar Minimum, and how that might offset climate change. Let's welcome to the programme from Northumbria University, Professor Valentina Zharkova. Professor, thanks for coming on the programme. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Lovely to have you on. It is strange to me that somebody with your background and your unimpeachable credentials, I would say, is not showing up on Sky and the BBC this week when it's, wall-to-wall stories about climate change. Why is that? Why have you not been showing up on our TV screens this week to talk about the Grand Solar Minimum?
Because I have a talk next week on the National Astronomy Meeting, and we're preparing a press release on Monday about our new paper. So this is what will bring attention, the question to the whole community.
Fantastic. So I might be jumping my guns maybe, and hopefully next week and the week after we'll see you. Is the science settled on carbon emissions being the chief primary cause for climate change, for exceptional weather events? Is it settled in your opinion?
No, it is not settled at all. Most of the leading scientists who do real research, they object this increase of the temperature made by the human technologies. We can name Akasofu, who was the director of Space Institution in Alaska. He published a paper in 2010 showing that the temperature increase is recovery from ice age, and it is baseline is slightly increasing, but large increase according to solar minimum and solar maximum. This is what has occurred, and nothing. This increase nowhere was related to any human-made effects. And our new paper actually says this increase indeed does exist, but the Earth had maybe in the last 100 to 120,000 years, we had about 60 such increases and decreases, and Earth happily survived as we are still here. So it is not settled, I had to say.
So we've had extreme changes in our climate that predate the Industrial Revolution. I find that interesting. I've read a little bit about this. I believe that at one time it was warm enough here, Professor, to grow grapes in Yorkshire.
Exactly.
Right.
The Romans, they grow grapes in Scotland, not even in Yorkshire.
It's extraordinary. So you believe there is an increase in temperature, but it is down to the fact that we are still emerging from the most recent ice age.
Yeah, this paper, which came this week and we press release will be next week, explaining why the temperature increasing, and this increase happened every 2,000 years. So this is the super grand cycle when the temperature slowly increasing and decreasing. So last minimum of this temperature was during the Maunder minimum. Indeed, now the Earth recovering from this Maunder minimum, slowly increasing the baseline temperature, but still temperature increases when you have solar activity in maximum and decreases when we have in minimum. So this happens normally on top of these baseline oscillations.
Now tell us about the Maunder minimum. You're obviously, and I don't mean in any way to patronise you, you're obviously very, very smart. I'm not, but I've been obviously reading as much as I could today, knowing that you were coming on, and thanks for coming on, by the way. What was the Maunder minimum? This is something that happened in the 17th century, was it? It was something to do with solar activity. Tell us what it was.
Yes, so we need to separate what is happening on the sun and what is happening on the Earth, because we are not the sun. So what is happening on the sun? It was this Maunder minimum, and the upcoming grand minimum, which starts from next year, will last for another 33 years. So what is Maunder minimum? When you don't see, it happened in 1645 until 1715. So basically, there's no sunspots seen on the sun. It was really low activity for 6 solar cycles. And this definitely reduced irradiance which come to the Earth normally during the maximal solar activity, because we didn't have any maxima at that time. So much less irradiance came, and there's become much cooler. And the Thames was freezing, there was snow and everything. So this would happen in 17th century during the Maunder minimum. What we calculated in the paper, which was published in Nature Scientific Reports in 2015, we discovered that similar grand minimum is coming from 2020 to 2053. It is upon us, literally. We live in very historic time. And the temperature will be again decreased but only for 3 cycles, not for 6 cycles like it was in Maunder minimum, but only for 3 cycles. And solar activity indeed now shows the signs of decrease. We have less sunspots, and this decrease will be increasing in the cycle 25, which we just entered, and especially cycle 26 in 11 years, which will be very, very low, basically similar like it was in Maunder. So in this time, we will not have much irradiance, and the temperature will be slightly reduced. So we don't know for how much. For example, for Maunder minimum, they calculated reduction of average temperature on the Earth was about 0.8 degree of Celsius. So maybe the decrease will be half of degree. It's just rough guess. I didn't do this calculation, what I'm just guessing. But what is happening on the sun will go into the phase of hibernation, or this grand minimum, when there's no sunspot. So what will be consequences for the Earth and other planets? That we will not have, first of all, will not have enough solar radiance, but probably it is not the main factor. What we mostly do not have, we will not have strong magnetic field which shields the planets, including Earth, from cosmic rays. So we have a lot of cosmic rays will be coming to the Earth and other planets, which we know create the clouds and reduce the temperature. Plus, what we also will have when magnetic field of the sun decreased, probably activity on the planets, quakes, volcanoes, and so on. So we don't know. It was not investigated, but we will live through next 30 years. We will see what will happen. So this was response, how planets respond that the sun reduces its magnetic field, which in fact is a very strong shield for all planets, protecting us from the cosmic strangers, cosmic rays.
From cosmic rays.
This shield will disappear.
And this decrease in solar activity will mean a reduction in temperature on Earth, you believe. But I think, am I right in saying, you've also speculated that it could be a very dangerous time for people?
Yes. It decreased the temperature. It is not simple like you will sit outside the temperature. You see in the Great Britain, we have June now, and I still periodically put heating on. So temperature definitely decreasing. There's no doubt about it. But we can put heating on if we have enough energy resources. If we have enough, remember when last year we had snow in March and for 2 weeks, people started putting heating, gas heating, electricity, and we completely used the capacity of our power stations that they needed to stop plants working because they couldn't provide enough energy to the people. So we were working on the limit of the capacity. And it was not even 3 weeks, it was only 2 weeks. So imagine if this would happen for a month or two. We were short in the energy resources. This is the first thing.
Well, one of the things the climate change proponents want to do is they want all of us to commit to keeping our homes heated at 19 degrees Celsius, which is going to be a big problem for senior citizens particularly. It's a problem for me, Professor. I'm 44 years old, but keeping my home at 19 degrees in the winter would be very difficult for me. So this is incredibly ironic. You think it's going to get really cold. They're saying it's going to get warm, but at the same time they're telling us, you know, we want you to commit to keeping your thermostat at 19 degrees. These are strange times for people. And my listeners will be listening to this and they'll be totally confused.
This is a complete hypocrisy from these guys who claiming that climate change comes from overheating. Because if it is global warming, we should not have these spells of the very cold weather. You cannot say this is warming if temperature is freezing. So this is hypocrisy or I don't know even how to call it. I don't want to be rude to call it, but this is not truth.
You can be rude if you want. This is an open forum
it's not
here.
My style. I don't want to. What I want to say that the temperature, if temperature decreased, I would never recommend anyone to put your temperature down and they get cold, they get flu, or they get pneumonia and die from the temperature, because you are not saving the environment. You need to save yourself and save basically your animals, your pets, and we will have problem, by the way, if the cold weather come. As I said, at least in the house, it is your choice. You can put heating on or out, but no one can heat what is outside. How wheat will be growing, how vegetables will be growing, how our animals will get any food if it is snow and wet.
So food shortages is a massive problem if you're right, and the decrease in solar activity causes a snap cooling period for 30 or 40 or 50 years. We're going to have a problem, because in that climate you can't grow the staples. And the staples are wheat. Right, okay. Can I ask you this? Let me just remind our listeners, Professor Valentina Zharkova is live on the line from Northumbria University. She has a PhD in astrophysics and is a professor in mathematics. So she's earned the right to speak. And I hope that when the paper is published in the coming weeks that we see the professor on BBC and Sky Television, because it's been one-way traffic.
Sky on the 27th of December 2017. It was the whole half an hour they were speaking about this global solar minimum. So there is a clip on Sky Television as well.
But the question is, right, because it seems like there's an agenda at the moment, at least the media seems to have an agenda. I was horrified as a journalist, as a historian, as a history graduate. I was disgusted to learn that the BBC has informed its producers not to find people like you, Valentina. You know, it's settled now. It's settled. There's no need to find any balance. So I'll be interested in the next couple of weeks to see the Sky return to you, and I hope they do. Let me just ask you this, and remember now, you are speaking to a layman who hasn't a clue. So you've got to speak to me like you're talking to a child. Why are you so certain that the sun's solar activity will decrease? Give us the quick answer that I can share with other people, and the mathematics behind that discovery. Why are you so certain it will decrease and we will enter that cooling period?
Because we applied the best method of eigenvalues. We found own oscillations of the sun from sun own magnetic field. So we run principal component analysis on the whole disk solar magnetic field data for the past 36 years. And we derived eigenvalues of the solar oscillations. And the top two ones produce these waves, two dynamo waves, which sun produced in two different layers, which are interacting with each other and producing the resulting wave, which seen as solar activity. And what we found, that these two waves are coming into, disruptive interference when the amplitude come into opposite signs. So one amplitude positive, another negative. So when the two waves meet, they obviously cancel each other. So amplitude nearly becomes zero. Is it simple?
Yeah, okay.
So it's very simple. So because of this happened during Maunder during the 66 years. What will be happening in this solar minimum will be only 33 years. But we see it from this wave interaction. So we did not wake up, look at the astrology and say, all right, these stars are there and it should be minimum. No, we walked from the sun. Sun told us. And our paper was called Heartbeat of the Sun, because we managed to uncover real own oscillations of the sun. This is why I'm so confident, because this is the sun. It's showing us what it has.
It's analysing the past and taking that mathematical equation, looking at what's happening now, And
yes, exactly. And when we looked to prove that this is the correct, we look backwards. It confirmed the grand minimum Wolfa, grand minimum Homer during the Roman Empire, and other grand minimum. When you look backwards, they were there. We simply didn't realize that they're occurring every 350, 400 years.
You must not be the only academic who knows this.
Yes, there are quite a few of us.
There are a few, yeah.
To combine the efforts and produce the conference which will inform the world that actually all the African countries, they take our word much more seriously than middle latitude countries. So they're building all these factories producing vegetables and everything, and they're planning to make big business from this grand minimum on European and North Americans and others, because they do understand this is not in our control. We can't control the sun. It happens over there.
Hang on a second, Professor. I'd like you to repeat that. Did you just say to me that in Africa they understand the grand minimum solar activity? They understand this is going to happen and they're preparing for it?
Yes, because they had first time last year, they had first snow in 140 years, and they had frost this year again. Al Jazeera was most active interviewer of myself. They know this is happening, so they decided, okay, we cannot do anything about it. Let's embrace it and make money out of it. Very smart people, I have to say.
The question must be asked. Surely governments must know or must be aware of your theory, your thesis that the cooling period is coming. Why, if they do know of it or if they are aware of it, why are they going full scale for global warming? Why are they buying into the global warming idea, which seems to be preposterous?
People who got funding for global warming, it's overwhelming funding. They got 26 postdocs in British Meteor Office in Reading against 23 postdoc which STFC Council gives for the whole astrophysics for the whole country. So these people, they try to suppress anything because their sort of funding will disappear. We done this, everything out of curiosity. We didn't get a pence of money apart from people donations. But these people, they put a lot of funding, and what it comes up they resulted with nothing. So this is why they're suppressing all those other people until the cold will come and the sun completely stop producing sunspot, and they cannot say it is not true.
They won't be able, at that stage, they won't be able to deny it. Now, you said that you've had donations. I've got to ask you, have any of those donations come from big oil and gas at all?
No, it was actually people. One person from Luton and some normal people who read and understand normal language. I try to express even in my papers because I read them for Nature. I know they will be read by general public. So I try to make the language understandable so people can understand the topic I'm discussing and the results which come out of it. So the people definitely understood what was discussed.
There's a lot of interest in our conversation on Twitter. We've got the professor for another 5 or 10 minutes max. It's great to have you on the programme today, by the way. Thanks for coming on. John is in Salford, and John says, why do we think the Chinese are buying vast swathes of land in Africa? It's because the Chinese know about the grand solar minimum. Is that right?
Yes. Why I know this? Because people from different parts of the world then somehow see me at the center of the information, honest person. They inform me about all these events. And they suggested to organize the conference, not me. They suggested, because they're really overwhelmed what is happening, and someone is doing something while the West governments, they close their eyes. I don't see anything. I'm in denial. I don't see anything. They abuse those people coming on the strike sitting on the roads. I said, you would better tell your people, go in and learn astronomy, because it will be laughable stock next week when they discover that the increase of the temperature will be lasting for another 600 years, and temperature increase will be by more higher than it is, and Earth.
So temperatures will continue to rise for the next 6 centuries, but during that period, we will have periods of cooling which could last for 2 or 3 decades, as you've talked about earlier on, because I want to go back to that. This is incredible. This is the Maunder minimum. Back in the 17th century, folks, the Thames froze over. We had a little ice age, and it's not just happened that one time. It's happened on other occasions as well, predating the Industrial Revolution. Professor Zharkova has looked at that data over the centuries, has done the mathematical equations, and has determined that in the next 25, 30, 40 years, we are going to have another little ice age, a cold snap, contrary to what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is saying, which is that we better transform our lives today, because 1.5 degrees temperature rise is going to cause catastrophe in the next 40, 50 years. You know, I spoke yesterday about this terrible situation. I'm sure you're aware of it. In Wales, there is a village called Fairborn, which is on the coast, Professor, and they've told the people in Fairborn that they're going to decommission the town there, and that in the next 25 years, everybody's going to have to leave that town and demolish their houses, just in case there is a 0.5 metre rise in sea level, which might breach the wall. It's absolutely dreadful. And the villagers there are saying, well, hang on a second, why don't you wait for 10 years and then see, and then decide to decommission the town? Why are you making the decision now?
That's wise words.
Yeah.
Because absolutely wise. Wait for 10 years and see what happens, and happen completely opposite they say. But if they move, it will be a good chance for them to sue this commission and idiotic governments for the false information they provided to the citizens. Because it's incredible. I just cannot believe that they come to this extent of the absolutely, I would say, idiocracy.
Let me ask you this. I've got to ask you this.
Excuse my language.
No, look, I understand. I should really do my job. It's difficult for me to do my job here because I have sympathy with your argument. And I'm not sponsored by big oil or gas either. I've done my own reading. I used to be an academic, and I've done my own research and reading, and I don't believe that CO2 is driving climate. And one of the main reasons I don't believe that is because the IPCC climate models don't even mention solar activity, which to me, even if I was Forrest Gump, if I was the dumbest man in the world, it just makes no sense to me. And I worry about this. A number of listeners have asked us to confirm that the Chinese are interested in Africa because the Africans understand the grand solar minimum. They're already planning for it. And the reason the Chinese are interested is because there will be investment opportunities there for them.
Absolutely.
That's right. Okay. Now, here's the question I wanted to ask you. Look, forget Greta Thunberg. God love Greta Thunberg and the people behind her. Mm-hmm. There are hundreds and hundreds of men and women that my listeners see every week on the BBC, on Channel 4, on Sky News. All of these men and women, not all of them now, but some of them, many of them are from academia like yourself, and they have stellar educations like your good self. And my listeners will say, I'm glad you brought Valentina on, Richie, but why should we believe her? There are hundreds of people this week on Sky News talking, saying it's inevitable. Massive sea level rise coming, melting of the glaciers. It's happening, and it'll be a tragedy if we don't do anything about it, because the future generations will have no world left. So why should we not believe them, and believe Professor Valentina. Why? That's what they'll say, some of them. I've got to say that. Some of my listeners will say this. They say, you've not given her a hard time, Richie. Which I've alluded to.
Because you compare how people do mathematics. And when you go to the methods, you would understand the method I do is a solid, rigid method. The method they apply to predict the temperature exposed by Professor Akasofu in his paper 2010, which shown they extrapolate the temperature, which has kind of a Doppler distribution with some bump. They extrapolate it on the ascending phase straightforward with linear interpolation and get increased 3-4 degrees, while in reality the temperature goes like to sine to the max and start decreasing, and they do not take this into account. So after that, how can you believe whatever they do? And there were other things which come in. I wouldn't mention, but there is a research about CO2 and water by Professor Selby from Imperial College. He's the temperature person on the Earth. I'm solar physicist, solar terrestrial physicist. I got into this discussion because they tried to suppress my research. Like if there is no something happening on the sun, it will not happen on the Earth. Only because of this, I started learning what people doing. And I discovered that there is no even measurable increase of carbon dioxide. We cannot measure, we can separate which is come from the natural resources, it come from the human, because the amount is so tiny. There is no instrument which could securely measure. So the error bars of the measurements are much higher than whatever they measure. So
now, I think
the proof that if the method is wrong and if the error bar of measurements are higher than itself the measurement, it means that you cannot trust these measurements. This is the basic classical statistics.
Yeah, you mentioned my pronunciation is terrible. Professor Akasofu, that's right, from 2010. I remember covering that story at the time.
Oh, you remember it?
Yeah,
okay.
I remember covering it at the time. I was making radio programs in Spain. There's a lot of tweets coming in here, an enormous amount of tweets. Let me just...
What is good? Our new paper, which is coming next week, actually proves Akasofu was right. And the reason of this is not related to the sun, related to the motion of the solar system.
But you said something, I can't wait to see this paper, by the way.
Okay.
You said something very interesting a second ago, that the amount of carbon dioxide created by human beings is negligible when it's compared to the carbon dioxide produced in nature. Now, That's interesting, because I remember listening to a lecture given by Professor Ian Plimer, a very respectable geologist whom I know you know all about, Professor Ian Plimer. And he gave a brilliant lecture to Parliament back in 2009. And he said the same thing. He said that we've been sequestering carbon dioxide in the sea for millennia, in the rocks, and it's been coming out of volcanoes. You know, we can't even quantify the volcanoes on the seabed. So the CO2 that we're making is basically irrelevant, is it? It's irrelevant.
Absolutely. Carbon dioxide, this is the food for our trees. They all live on it. So the trees, the forest consume it. It is not happening what they say. It is, I just amazed how they managed to brainwash so many people around to accept this so-called voodoo science as a real science.
Voodoo science. What is there something more sinister going on? I ask you that because their solutions are terrible solutions for humanity. They're very draconian. They're very fascistic, I would say. You know, they want us all to have smart fridges so that they can spy on what we eat. They want to tell us we can't travel. It sounds very controlling, the solutions. And I wonder, is that part of some agenda somewhere? I'm very conspiratorial, Professor, now. But what do you think of that? The solutions are very controlling and very worrying. Very big brother, I would have said.
I don't know.
You don't know?
As I said, I'm pure scientist. I never thought even about consequences when we published our first paper. I thought we discovered something on the sun, which is very interesting for the humankind. And I didn't realize this huge response, especially from the climatologists who were trying to suppress anything we do.
Trying to shut you down.
Trying to suppress even publications of our papers and so on. And then I discovered there were so many people who invested into these lousy models. It is like in the last century, 17th century, it was the model of our planet that the Earth was center of the planet and sun rotates around the Earth. It's Ptolemy model. And then at the same, close to the Mount Minimum, Copernicus appeared and he discovered, no, the sun is at the center of the solar system and planets rotate around it. And it took about 20, if not 50 years until the whole community accepted it, because Inquisition basically suppressed those people who believe how it is heretics. How could a sun not rotate around the Earth? We see it rotates on the sky. Cannot be, because it means that we are not the main thing in the universe. Yes, we are not. We are simple dust. We're a simple planet. And there are now many exoplanets somewhere in the world. So this is what I'm saying, that the change of concept and change of perception, it's a lengthy process. So I can't say I would strongly disappointed. It took, when we published our paper, it's only 4 years ago. So we have a long way to go. And I have, unlike Copernicus, I have very good support from the sun, because we're walking into grand solar minimum and we'll watch it from the front seat, each of us.
Final question for you. Thanks for your time today, Professor. Professor Valentina Zharkova is live on the line from Northumbria University.
You're welcome.
No, it's good to have you on. And the suppression that you've been putting up with and the attempts by people to stop your work from reaching people, I just want to ask you this. I don't want to end negatively, but you've got to be careful, don't you, about your own position in academia, because there will be those who... I get worried. People are starting to talk about climate denial, and that sounds very dangerous. That it's almost like some people want to make it taboo to talk about climate change or to deny man-made climate change. So are you worried about academia? Are you worried about your own career or professors who might, share your aspirations, that they might need to be careful about their jobs? Again, I don't want to be negative, but I've got to ask that question.
Yes, I'm worried about my colleagues. My collaborator from Moscow, Elena Popova, was struggling actually in Moscow. The colleagues who were supporting this idiotic global warming and stochastic sun. So instead of waste we produced in the sun regularly, they say the sun produces like stochastic heartbeat. And I said, it cannot happen. And so anyway, her life is very difficult in there. She changed 2 places of work because people become very jealous. When she got a press release, people become very jealous. In Northumbria University, they're more or less supportive. I wouldn't say we don't have many people who support global warming. I better not to speak to them because they become very agitated. So if I avoid them, I can survive. No one suppresses me because I publish these papers. To the contrary, the university is proud that I'm publishing them, so
Great.
It's not so bad.
That's marvellous. No, it is. It's marvellous to hear that you've got the support of the university. I mean, science should be free, and it should be free of obviously suppression and censorship. There should be no censorship. You've earned your degrees and your PhD in astrophysics and your degrees in mathematics and astronomy. You've earned those. So you've earned the right to put forward your thesis and your papers and your work without having to worry about other people trying to get you fired. So I want to thank you for coming on today, Professor. Thanks. I'm sure we'll talk about this again in the very near future, with your permission. And I wish you all the best with the publication of the paper. And I hope I'm watching you on national television next week. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Paper is published. We only publish the press release soon, so it's fine. Thank you.
Marvellous.
Goodbye.
Thanks for that. Bye for now. That was Professor Valentina Zharkova, who's got a PhD in astrophysics, and she's got a master's in applied mathematics and is a professor of mathematics at Northumbria University. And she believes that she can prove that in the coming decades we are going to see a serious reduction of solar activity, which will bring about a cooling of the planet for a short time, at least in terms of history anyway, for a few decades, like the Maunder minimum of the 17th century. And her work has been peer-reviewed and has been signed off by mathematicians around the world and other academics. But it has to be said that the climate science people have attacked her with vigour over the last couple of years and tried to pull apart the work that she's done. I think it's fascinating. I'm glad she came on the programme today. That brings us up to about 2.5 minutes past 6. I think we'll take a tune, and when we come back, I will read your comments. Yeah, you can tweet at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Don't forget, Gerald Celente, the Trends Journal publisher himself, will join the programme live from New York in a couple of minutes' time. Before that, though, Freddie and the Boys, tune called Crazy Little Thing Called Love. Love this? Yeah, Crazy Little Thing Called Love from Queen. Gerald Celente joins the programme in a few minutes' time. Thanks for your tweets and your retweets. Thanks, Patricia in Zurich. Thanks, Patricia, for that. I haven't read it yet, but I've retweeted it. Has Greta Thunberg actually claimed to be able to see carbon? Did she say that? Apparently, it looked like a gag, but apparently back in August of 2018, young Greta did tell the Swedish Parliament in Stockholm, I can see carbon. Must be a fan of The Matrix, maybe. I don't know. David tweets, can't let a little thing like science get in the way of an official narrative. Next, people will be denying that jet fuel burns hot enough to melt the engine that surrounds it. See where you're going there, David? I see where you're going there. Yeah. Look, I'm not a scientist. Far from it. The sun and solar activity is the biggest influencer on climate on planet Earth. And there's an abundance of evidence to support that. When you look at the IPCC and their climate models, particularly the global warming scaremongering climate models of the mid-2000s, they ignore solar activity. The Earth is bombarded day in and day out every second by solar rays. It is. We don't burn to death because we are protected from those solar rays by the ozone and by other gases in the atmosphere. Prevents us from burning to death, right? Right. Sometimes the sun has a lot of activity, a lot of sunspots. Other times in history it doesn't. What the professor is saying is, we know now. And we know this for many reasons. We know because of geology, because of geologists like Ian Plimer. We now have a fairly accurate record of the increases and decreases in temperature on planet Earth over the last 2,000 years or 1,000 years or whatever. And we know this. And we know that when it got very, very cold, we know that it was because of a big decrease in solar activity. And our mathematical equations show, and they are sound, says Professor Valentina Zharkova, that this is going to happen again in the next few years. And it's going to become very cold. And we will have frost in Africa, as she said. Whereas earlier in the timeline, 500, 600, 700 years ago, we were able to grow grapes in Scotland. We've had totally mad changes of temperature on planet Earth in the last 1,000 to 1,500 years. And many of those changes, and most of those predated the Industrial Revolution. She was absolutely brilliant. Let's welcome our next guest to the programme. He might be there, he might not. He's phoned me and I've answered. He is the publisher of the legendary Trends Journal, and he's been accurately predicting geopolitical and economic trends for many, many years. I first came across him years ago when he was on the Oprah Winfrey programme, and he's been doing me a great favour by coming on my programmes on FM radio and syndicated radio for years. He's a terrific man. I do recommend that you subscribe to the Journal. I can't recommend it highly enough. I will put links out for those of you who don't know where to go. If he is there, I'm taking a risk here because ordinarily I phone him. Let's welcome back the great Gerald Celente. You are there.
I'm here. Thank
Legend.
you so much for the kind introduction.
No, I love you. You know, I'm not sycophantic. I love listening to you. I watch the trends on YouTube. It's fantastic. It's hilariously funny. And that's what you do, you see. You're a genius. You bring humour and mirth and laughter, which gets people's attention. And then you say, right, well, this is what's happening. And it's a rare gift, my friend.
Thank you.
You have been predicting in the Journal and in your media appearances going way back that around about this time that things were going to get very serious in the Middle East around Iran, and you're right again. I know you don't like being right, but you are right. Donald Trump said something, Gerald, which amazed me. He said, if John Bolton had his way, he'd attack the entire world. So why keep him around? What's happening, Gerald? What's going on at the moment?
You know, it's again, one of our top trends for 2018 was market shock mass murder. And what we were writing about was how the markets, the global economy, and the equity markets were going to collapse because of Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States taking aim at Iran. And we said that this was going to continue to build, and it was going to explode in the coming years. And that's the point we're at right now. And Trump was the one that unilaterally pulled America out of the nuclear agreement that the atomic energy agencies and everyone else said that Iran was fully in compliant with and staying with them. And it really has to do with the United States' support of Israel. And you go back over the years, I mean, we've been writing about it in the Trends Journal. We even had our great illustrator, Anthony Frieda, do a cartoon of Benjamin Netanyahu going back several years ago at the United Nations with a cartoon bomb and a fuse on it, saying that it was the nuclear bomb ready to explode that Iran was building. So when you look at the support that Trump has from guys like Sheldon Adelson, a very strong pro-Israeli, owns a newspaper over there as well, dual citizenship, and he's very anti-Iran. He's saying to blow them up. And so you follow the money. I mean, morons and imbeciles call this stuff campaign contributions. Adults call it payback. And then you look at Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, and you can see that when Netanyahu came to the United States one time, he stayed at the Kushner's house. And they're very supportive of the settlement issues. These aren't settlements. This is stolen land. We'll call it settlements, and morons and jerks will swallow the settlement crap we're shoving down their throats. Oh, and God gave us the land. You know, I mean, God, it was just invented, the whole world, when Israel became a religion. I mean, come on with this stuff. We even heard this little moron, Chucky Schumer, the senator of New York, is saying that the reasons there's problems with the Palestinians is that they don't believe in the Israeli Bible. I mean, he actually said this. So that's what's going on in Saudi Arabia. It's the Sunnis fighting the Shia since they've been doing since the death of Muhammad, and the United Arab Emirates, and it's about not allowing or wanting Iran to have any control in the Middle East. And you read today, I mean, it's a big story as well. Trump slapped new sanctions on Iran. And he said, and this is the Trump quote, he said that Trump said hard-hitting sanctions would prevent top officials from assessing financial instruments. The U.S. did not seek conflict, but, quote, it can not ever let Iran have a nuclear weapon, end quote. Oh, not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon? What if Iran had nuclear weapons and America didn't? And Iran said, we're not going to allow you to have nuclear weapons. Oh, that'd be different. Oh, but Israel could have nuclear weapons. India could have nuclear weapons. France could have nuclear weapons. Britain could have nuclear weapons. Pakistan, well, you don't one after another. Oh, but Iran can't have nuclear weapons. So Iran made the deal, okay, we won't have them, let go of your sanctions. And Trump killed it. And now they're trying to kill the nation, and they're doing it by the economic sanctions that they're putting on. That's economic warfare.
Israel has 90. And you said 90 weapons, apparently. 90 warheads. You said economic sanctions, war. That is war, isn't it? Because the consequences are horrendous for the civilian population. We saw it in Iraq, didn't we, Gerald?
Yeah. And you're looking at an inflation rate in Iran, I think it's like at 37%. Their rial is crashing. Their unemployment rate is skyrocketing. And look what they did to Venezuela, the same thing. Sanctions. And we're going to put these sanctions on so there's an internal revolution. They're going to overthrow the country. And then they shot down what? Depending on whose numbers you're looking at, an American drone worth well over $100 million to $200 million. What the hell are you doing over there? Could you imagine if Iran was off the coast of New York or L.A. or San Francisco or down in the Gulf of Mexico flying drones around? Oh, it would be fine. Oh, and bring in the Chinese fleet too and the Russian fleet. They could come anywhere they want around America. It would be just great. While the murderous Americans are all over the world. Over 800 bases in 79 countries. What the hell are you doing over there? I'll tell you what we're doing over there. We're sick son of a bitches. Oh, I got to be equal now in these times of identity politics. Yeah. And 6 daughters of bastards. So sons of bitches, daughters of bastards, and they are. They're the Condoleezza Rices and the Susan Rices and the Hillary Clintons, the Theresa Mays, the Camerons, the Clintons, the Obamas, the Trumps, the Boltons, the Pompeos, the Rumsfeld. You have psychopaths and sociopaths running and ruining lives around the world. Oh, and not only in America, take a trip to the Congo. Let's go to Sudan. No, Algeria, I hear it's wonderful over there right now. It's all over the world. There's a great quote by Dwight D. Eisenhower, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces in World War II, and of course a 2-term president. And he said, anyone seeks the office of presidency is either an egomaniac or crazy. You got it, Jack. Oh, and Jill, I got to be fair.
And Jill, the identity politics. Go to trendsresearch.com to subscribe to the Trends Journal. Gerald Celente is our guest, and we'll have Gerald for about 15 more minutes. Loads of tweets coming in on this. Do you believe that Trump was being pushed hard to attack those radar targets inside Iran last Thursday, but that he held off because he worried about the loss of life? And what does that mean? Because if the neocon, Zionist, hawkish madmen that you've described so well are desperate for something serious to kick off there, why didn't they on Thursday, Friday?
First of all, the term hawkish is disrespectful to a hawk. These are sick people that should be in insane asylums and in straitjackets. They're murderers. What difference is it? Richie, I don't like that guy Gaddafi, says the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner in the racist United States that elected a black president. So I don't want to hear the racist crap anymore. Are there racists? Of course there are. Are there imbeciles? Yeah, I just went through a whole load of them. I gave them by name. Yeah. but it's not a racist nation. So the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner, I don't like that guy Gaddafi. I don't like that guy Assad. Let's destroy their nation. What makes him any different, or a Trump, or with sending missiles into Syria, or a Bush illegal wars in Iraq, Afghanistan? What makes them any different than some sick person going into a school or a workplace and killing a couple of dozen people? What makes them any... I don't like those people in this school. I had enough of their crap. I'm going to kill them. What makes them any different than a murderer Obama? I don't like that guy Gaddafi, and I don't like what he's doing to his peoples, I tell you. In the richest country in Africa, where the people have the most rights of anywhere, what makes him any different? Or a Bush, or an Obama, or a Clinton, or any one of them. So going back to your other question about why didn't Trump do it, I'll tell you why he didn't do it. Iran's not Libya. Yeah. Iran's not Syria. Iran's not Iraq. They just blew out this high-powered drone the size of a 737 out of the air at high altitude. The Straits of Hormuz are very narrow. You want to screw with us, we'll blow you out of the water. That's why they didn't do it.
Because Iran is, as you said quite rightly, vastly better prepared for any sort of conflict. I want to just mention a couple of tweets, by the way. We get lots of tweets when you were on. You can follow Gerald on Twitter as well. It's at Gerald Celente, and it's trendsresearch.com. Sharon has said, thank goodness someone is talking about the Sunni against Shia genocide. Thanks to Gerald for that, pitting one off against another. And sadly, the US and the UK have chosen the despotic state of Saudi Arabia. Do you often wonder, or do you wonder about why the people, the Sunni and Shia people, why they've never looked at what's, their common enemy and what's happening to their countries, and who's supplying and supporting the terrorism in those countries? Why don't they look at their common enemy and say, well, look, let's put our weapons down. Let's not fight one another. Let's take on the US and France and Israel and the United States. Why don't they? Is it that entrenched there, Gerald?
Yeah, well, look at who the Saudis are. I mean, it's a gang that was created, 1934. That's when it's a gang. And again, we're talking about racism and slavery in the United States. Who was selling the slaves? They weren't white guys in Africa.
Yeah.
They were criminal black people in countries. So you got criminals running their countries. And it's all about the petrodollar, dollars and money. That's all it is. They could care less about anything else. They're maniacs. People don't want to call them what they are. Oh, by the way, I just wanted just a quick, because we don't have a lot of time. We sent out a trend. You get them, our trend alerts.
Yeah.
We sent one on June 6th. And in that trend alert, the headline was "The Gold Bull Run." This is at a time when gold was at $1,332 an ounce. As we're speaking now, gold is at $1,420 an ounce. So this is the beginning of the gold bull run, and the reasons I'm mentioning it also has to do with the Middle East. And if this war escalates, you're going to see oil prices spike well over $100 a barrel. And it'll crash the global economies. People are going into gold for two reasons. The major reason, of course, is the safe haven asset, but safe in terms of geopolitical tensions and safe in the terms of the gross devaluation of all of the currencies around the world as they're lowering interest rates, more quantitative easing. I call it monetary methadone to keep the drug-addicted bull running. So I don't give financial advice, But the downside of gold, as I see it, is only between $100 and $120, which is a very small downside risk, considering what the upside potential is. And I've been saying this for 6 years, and now gold, by the way, just recently broke into the 6-year range, back in that level. And that is that gold had to break over 1385, which it has, to hit the next mark of $1,450 an ounce. My forecast is when gold breaks over $1,450 an ounce, it's going to spike toward the 2,000 range. And again, we don't have any advertisers, as you know, in the Trends
Journal. I know that.
Journal.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying me to say this, and I've been negative on gold for 6 years. So I just want to mention that because it also ties in very tightly to the geopolitical and the geoeconomic scale. There's a global slowdown going on. And that's why, by the way, you're not seeing oil prices spike, even though there's tensions in the Middle East and with... Oh, that's the other thing. They blamed Iran for sabotaging those ships. And there was absolutely no evidence at all. And you even hear, Trump saying on TV, well, Iran did do it, and you know they did it because you saw the boat. Yeah, that little motorboat they had next to that.
Could have been anything. Could have been anything.
Yeah, a motorboat. But the language is, Iran did it, you know they did it. So you know they did it, Richie, because he's saying you know they did it because you know why? You saw the boat. And you also know that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to al-Qaeda.
That's right.
And of course you know the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the one that never happened. And it's one lie after another. He went on to denounce Iran as, quote, a nation of terror. Oh, yeah, those Iranians, look what they did to Libya. Oh, no, look what they did to Syria. Assad has to go. Oh, that was Obama, I forgot. Look what they did to Iraq. Oh, no, that was Bush. Oh, no, the Iraq, you mean that Rumsfeld, another piece of garbage crap, low-life. I can't use the other words, but has to do with wanker and a little one.
That's right.
When he gives Saddam Hussein the golden spurs, and then they go and start war against Iran. Oh, people forgot that one, didn't they? So Iran, according to Trump, is a nation of terror. It's just like that other piece of garbage, Colin Powell. Oh, he was black too. Gee, no, blacks don't get anywhere in this country. And again, I'm not saying that. Don't call me names, because I'm tired of hearing this identity politics. Good and bad comes in all races, creeds, colors, and genders. So save your crap for somebody else. You know why his name is Colin? Because that's what crap runs through. And this crappy piece of crap is the little boy that held up that little vial of proof that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to al-Qaeda. You remember that at the UN Security Council. And people swallowed Colin crap. And they're doing the same thing now.
I remember talking to you about that in the late 2000s when these people were still around, or some of them were still around. And we've had some interesting things happen here in this country in the last week or so. We've had the High Court in this country accept that the government has a case to answer over arms sales to Saudi Arabia, which I found very interesting. And there's going to be an inquiry. Now, I know these inquiries don't end up going anywhere, but I found it was interesting anyway. I wanted to ask you about this because we've got about 5 minutes left. I saw something last week I never thought I'd see on Fox News. Tucker Carlson, who, I suppose, when O'Reilly was kicked out of Fox News, Bill O'Reilly, Tucker has kind of become that, I don't know, he's taken that slot and he's in there. And he gives a long-winded monologue, which is okay, so do I. And then he interviews some interesting guests. What I found extraordinary for Fox News is you have a frontline presenter, a marquee presenter, saying some of the things that he's been saying about Iran, namely that nobody should attack Iran, namely that we haven't seen any definitive proof that the Iranians attacked those ships, as you quite rightly said there. We should leave Iran alone. It would be crazy. What's happening, Gerald? What's happening at Fox News Central that these opinions, which you talked about the Iraq War when you had O'Reilly and you had Hannity and all these goons, all these liars, you know, basically pushing the government narrative. How has it come to somebody like Tucker Carlson? What's going on?
I don't know. And I used to be on his show. I'll tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
He used to be on MSNBC. And I used to be on his show a lot when he was on MSNBC. Fox doesn't have me on anymore. Either does MSNBC anymore. But anyway, he was on MSNBC and he had a late night show. It was like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And it was in Secaucus, New Jersey. They send a car for me and go down there. And they had a very small green room. This is like 2000, I'm going to say 2006, 2007, around that time. And I'm sitting in the green room. There's nobody there. You know, it's at night. And I'm listening to this woman going on in there. And she leaves, and Tucker calls, "Hey, Gerald, how you? I'm fine. How you doing?" I said to him, I said, "Who was that?" I said, "My God, she's so full of herself." He said, "Oh, her name is Rachel Maddow, and they're grooming her."
Isn't that amazing? This is around the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Said, my God, who is this self-absorbed person? God, she's so full of herself going on. He said, they're grooming her, and they did. So that's what the game is. You got to be one of them.
You got to be one of them. His position seemed to have changed over the last few years because he was certainly more conservative in terms of the things he was saying and the interviews he was doing. So unless
he
used
to have me on because he wanted to hear what I had to say. So he was open-minded about a lot of things.
And that seems to define him, doesn't it? He seems to enjoy speaking with people. And finally, I want to ask you, and thanks again for coming back, trendsresearch.com. Just briefly now, I know you've got other people to talk to, but you did mention identity politics, which is becoming very serious. Twitter storms, people getting fired from academia, people getting fired from their jobs because they support something. A knitting website, Gerald, with 8 million people connected. I know you know this story. A knitting website, crocheting. They've said that they will ban members if they talk about Donald Trump in a supportive manner. Now, it doesn't matter that you and I don't support what Donald Trump is doing. What's happening to the world? I mean, is this censorship on steroids that we're seeing?
Well, it's one of our top trends in 2019. Censorship 2019. And that's what we're seeing. And again, this is what, there's another thing too. This is a way of doing things when you have no courage. Look what's going on in Hong Kong. What do you got? About 7.5 million people there, right?
That's right.
And you got 2 million people taken to the streets. 2 million people. You're lucky to get 1 million people in the United States going out for one day all around the country, a country of 320 million plus, to protest. So this is a way of protesting without doing anything. It's the cheap way out. Because the people lack courage. Oh, why did the Berlin Wall fall? Oh, people forgot that the people started going to the wall, and day after day, more and more people, millions, day after day, they refuse to leave day after day. You don't have that here. Look what's going on in Algeria. Look what's going on in with the people going out week after week after week. Millions of people. They overthrew the first government. Now they're trying to get a new one in there. So identity politics is a cheap way out. That's all it is.
Folks, follow Gerald on Twitter. It's at Gerald Celente. Support the Trends Journal. Do it because he's been on the money for years, and that's not a cliche. And his team, outstanding. And you can find Trends in the News on YouTube. I can't speak today. Trends in the News on YouTube, which is hilariously funny and very informative as well. And you don't get much of that anymore in the media. Thanks for your time again today, my friend. Have a great summer. I'm sure we'll speak before the end of the summer with your permission, but thanks for doing it.
Oh, I'd love to. And thank you for all you're doing. By the way, we also have a podcast called Trend Vision 2020. And anybody, you go to the podcast world and you could get on. It's Trend Vision 2020. I could say honestly, there's no reporting of history before it happens, like we do in that podcast. So thank you for all you do, Richie, and always great being on with you.
You too, my friend. Speak again real soon, and that's on iTunes, by the way. Thanks, Gerald, the great Gerald Celente, live on the line from New York City today. 26 and a half minutes to the top of the hour. We're going to take some music. Am I? Have I got some music? Yeah, I've got some Macy Gray. Let's have Macy Gray. I'll come back, I'll read some comments, and then we'll, I don't know what we'll talk about. We'll find something. Macy Gray on the Richie Allen Show for Tuesday, June 25th, 2019. It's miserable here in the dirty old town that is Salford. I met my love. It's been horrendous. You see, you can't not hark back to Professor Valentina Zharkova. People are putting their heating on. We had that horrendous snow late March last year. There's frost in Africa. And yet, I pointed this out on Twitter recently. It doesn't matter what the weather event, doesn't matter what happens, the climate religious zealots will blame it on climate change. It is a wonderful web of deceit. They've managed to do this with the aiding and abetting of the mainstream media, who refuse to question them. You know, they've actually brought about a reality. They've brought about a paradigm where it doesn't matter what happens, whether it's hailstones, whether it's a cold snap in early July, it can be called anomalous weather and it can be blamed on man-made CO2 and all of that old jazz. And climate change denial is a phrase that I first came across about 5-6 years ago. And a learned man called Jim Mars, wherever he is, I hope he's well, Jim. Jim said, Richie, it won't be long before somebody tries to enshrine climate change denial in law. And enshrine it in law meaning that you can't talk about it because it's dangerous, it's harmful. We're seeing that at the moment with the vaccine, with the attack on those who want to question the safety of vaccines. And social media companies being called to heel by governments who are demanding that they marginalise or shadow ban or delete people who are talking about vaccines in a negative way. And that's going to be, Gerald has been talking about this on the Trends Journal, not specifically about vaccines now at all, but he's been talking about this censorship as a top trend for 2019-2020. And we'll see the same thing applied to any discussion on social media about climate change. It will be deemed taboo. It will be deemed as harmful to suggest that climate change isn't actually happening. Well, it is happening, of course. As she said, we are warming. And we will continue to get gradually warmer over the next 600 years. But naturally, because of the solar activity she mentioned. And because this has been happening for millennia. I'm kind of answering questions that are coming in on Twitter, by the way. And I'm doing it in my way, rather than dealing with each question one by one. But that's how I see things. So we're going to see this in the next 6 to 8 months to a year. We're going to see the social media companies, which are doing it already, but they're going to do it on steroids. They're going to make it impossible to find information that counters the narrative, contradicts the narrative, or information that downright proves the narrative is unstable, that the narrative doesn't hold any water, if you see what I mean. We're going to see these things happen. That's what's going to happen. And these are dangerous times. And of course, this year, 2019 and 2020, it's happening already. This will be the year that in the UK, questions are going to be asked about programs like this. And why people like me are allowed to operate independently online and outside the reach of the regulatory bodies. We can't have that either. That's coming as well. He's right. The next couple of years will be the era of censorship, unlike anything which has ever been seen before on planet Earth. Where people like me, now it's not about me. It's not about me. It doesn't matter what you think of this program. But programs like mine, I know there aren't too many programs like mine, but independent operators who go on air and say, right, I'm going to do a program live every day or a live stream, and I'm going to introduce a few ideas that I have. I'm going to rant a bit, just get a few things off my chest and speak about things that I think are important. The regulatory authorities in the UK and eventually the US, but it's going to happen here first. They're going to say, you can't do that. You have to be bound by the same rules and regulations as ITV, Channel 4 or RT. And I'll say, why? I'm not a broadcasting organisation. I'm not. I don't have a bunch of programmes that I manage with other presenters. It's just me. I come on here at 5 o'clock just doing what I do, speaking to people, and I put that onto my website where people can hear it. It's none of your effing business, is what I will say. They will say, it is. Got to be regulated. So I'll have to be regulated. And then they'll say, now, that means now that you are regulated, that means that somebody can complain about you, Mr. Allen. 6 weeks into the regulated Richie Allen show, one of the Zionist nutcases in the Northwest here will complain about an interview that I will do with somebody who blames Israel for everything. Right? Won't matter that I argue with the guy, that I do my job, that I play devil's advocate. It will constitute hate speech and I will be fined. Yeah. That's just a fine for the first infraction. A couple of months later on, somebody else will complain. The complaint will be upheld and I will be suspended. Yeah. There you are. You can't do your program now for 3 months or for 3 weeks. Let's say 3 weeks. And if you do, some people will come around and confiscate your equipment. Now, this is not me going all Alex Jones now with the paranoid theories. I used to love Alex. I still love Alex. This is not me putting out scenarios which are unlikely to happen. This is what will happen. Confiscate your equipment. We were told at the People's Voice in London that we, as a television channel, even though we were on the internet, because we were a channel with a linear schedule of programs, they said you must have an Ofcom license because Ofcom has domain over the internet. So we said no problems. Well, we didn't say no problems. We argued and screamed and bitched and moaned about it. But they said if you don't get a license, your equipment will be confiscated. You'll be shut down. That's a fact. That's what he said to us. So we had no choice but to get a license. It was either that or locate the whole project in some country in Latin America. So they're going to do that. They're going to censor everything. They're going to go after all of the information that is broken down and spoken about on programs like this. They're going to go after it in every way they can. So online, so you've got a blog and you're a good writer and you write about things and you're smart. They're going to go, well, we're going to make it impossible for anybody to see that. You can do your blog all you want on your WordPress site, but we are going to make sure that nobody reads it. We'll just do that. You're talking about vaccines on Facebook, are you? In a private conversation, we're going to stop that. We're going to intervene in that. So you like listening to Tony Gosling, do you? On his podcast, do you like a bit of that, do you? You like listening to Maria Heller, do you? Not anymore. It won't be listenable. It won't be possible to hear it in the United Kingdom. We're going to block it. That's where we're going. Anyway, I'm not going to do. This isn't something I haven't said before. I've said this before, maybe in a different way. This is where we're going, and it's got nothing to do with funding. This is not a call or a appeal for funding. Not in the least. It's got nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with money. But it's where we're going. It's where we're going. Mr. Sin is telling me that my earlier live stream is on YouTube, but I don't believe it is. Is it? Is it? Tuesday, June 20th. What's going on? Why can't I watch that on my channel? I don't understand what's going on. Very strange thing has happened today. I'm kind of stunned that I uploaded I did a stream, I did a live chat this morning, everything was fine. But on my YouTube channel, which is owned and controlled by me, I can't see it on my own channel. It's telling me it's still processing. Does anybody know what's going on? Because I haven't the Scooby-Doo. Thanks to Mr. Sin for that. That's definitely fuckery, isn't it? Isn't it? I mean, let's be honest about it. I mean, I can't see that on my channel. I've even signed out of my channel and tried to find my live stream, and I can't find it. That is fuckery, right?
What kind of fuckery are you?
And it must be. Why can't I see it? Wow. Anyway, listen, I'm going to love you and leave you. Less is more today. Nothing more to add today. It's been a long old day. I will be with you again at 9:30 tomorrow morning for the newspaper review. And then tomorrow I will be with you at 1 p.m. UK time. Tomorrow and Thursday, because we've got a concert we're going to tomorrow night. We've got another engagement on Thursday. It just worked out like that. So I will do the programmes tomorrow at 1 and Thursday at 1. And the newspaper review will be at 9:30 as usual. Going to see the Eagles tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that. The Eagles. And that's what I'm closing the programme out with today. Look after yourselves and one another. Thanks to Gerald Celente, what a legend. And thanks to Professor Valentina Zharkova. She was amazing as well. Speak tomorrow. Until then, bye from me. Bye now. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tweeting.